Imagine you are walking down a street and you see someone struggling with a heavy piece of furniture, trying to get it through a doorway. Without even thinking, your first instinct might be to rush over and hold the door open, to offer a hand. That little spark of wanting to help, that impulse to make things easier for someone else, even though you get nothing tangible in return. That feeling is at the very heart of a revolutionary idea. It's an idea that a man named Peter Kropotkin dedicated his life to exploring, and it completely challenges the story we're often told about who we are. We hear all the time that life is a brutal competition, that it's a struggle where only the strongest and most selfish survive. This view of nature, and by extension humanity, as a relentless fight is so common, it feels like simple common sense. You probably recognize that stubborn feeling of being right when you defend your position in an argument, holding your ground because winning feels like everything. Many of us cling to familiar ideas because they create a sense of order and predictability in a complicated world. But what if that story is incomplete? What if our deepest nature isn't about competing against each other, but about cooperating with each other? This is exactly what Peter Kropotkin asked over a century ago. A scientist and explorer, he traveled to the vast, harsh landscapes of Siberia and saw something that contradicted the popular theory of evolution. He didn't just see animals fighting tooth and claw for survival. He witnessed countless acts of cooperation. He saw animal species thriving not by being the strongest individuals, but by working together as groups, by practicing mutual aid. He saw that in the toughest conditions, the creatures most likely to survive were those who helped each other out. He came to a powerful conclusion. Cooperation is just as important a law of nature as competition, if not more so. For humans, he argued, this instinct to work together is our greatest evolutionary advantage. He wrote, "Mutual aid is as much a law of animal life as mutual struggle." Think about that for a moment. It suggests that our urge to be part of a community, to help a neighbor, to share resources, isn't some naive fantasy or a thin layer of civilization painted over a savage core. It is our core. It is baked into our very biology. This idea creates a fascinating tension inside all of us. On the surface, we have our instinctive, fast-thinking brain that wants to protect itself, to be right, to win. This is the part that gets frustrated in traffic or feels a pang of jealousy. It's a natural and necessary part of us. But beneath that, there's a deeper awareness, a knowing that we are also profoundly connected. Remember when you realized a childhood belief wasn't quite true? That first hint that the world was more complex than you thought? It's that same feeling of a deeper truth waiting to be acknowledged. We see this tension play out in our own lives every single day. We might feel a competitive urge to get the last item on a store shelf, but then a deeper pull makes us notice the person next to us who looks like they need it more, and we let them take it. We might want to cling to our opinion in a heated discussion, but then a deeper understanding allows us to truly listen and find common ground. This is the daily, quiet battle between the story we've been sold and the truth we feel in our bones. We sometimes fool ourselves into thinking that looking out for number one is the only rational way to be, ignoring the countless acts of kindness and cooperation that make our lives possible, from the roads we drive onto the food in our supermarkets, all built by people working together. Kropotkin's principle of mutual aid gently reveals that our selfishness is often the illusion, the short-sighted trick we play on ourselves. The cooperation, the community, the helping hand, that's the reality. It's the foundation we're built on. Embracing this doesn't mean ignoring our competitive streaks or our frustrations. It means understanding them in a new light, seeing them as surface-level reactions, rather than our fundamental destiny. It means trusting that deeper pull toward each other, that innate knowledge that we are stronger together. This cracks open a whole new way of seeing our daily interactions. moving us from a story of relentless competition to one of deep-seated cooperation. We start our journey in a place of simplicity, where the world seems to operate on clear, straightforward rules. In this initial phase, we often default to a knee-jerk reaction, a quick, self-protective response rooted in the idea that life is a race and everyone is a potential competitor. If someone cuts us off in traffic, our immediate thought is one of anger and indignation. A colleague getting a promotion feels like a personal loss. This is the old, ingrained story of competition as the primary driver of human behavior. A story that feels true because it's so familiar, and because our immediate, unthinking reactions so often confirm it. We see things in black and white, assuming that looking out for number one is just the default setting for humanity. But then we enter the confusing middle, the phase where things get wonderfully and frustratingly complicated. This is where Kropotkin's work really starts to challenge us. He didn't deny the existence of struggle or hardship. In fact, he saw these challenges not as proof of a competitive nature, but as the very crucible that forges cooperation. The tough times, the droughts, the famines, the harsh winters he observed in the animal world were what made mutual aid not a luxury, but an absolute necessity for survival. This is the phase we find ourselves in when we start to question our initial reactions. You might be someone who resists change at first, holding on to that competitive mindset because it feels safe and known. Most of us feel uneasy during transitions, and this is exactly that moment. We see the homeless person on the street, and our knee-jerk reaction might be to look away. A thought of, they should just help themselves, echoing in our minds. But then a new, more thoughtful response, inspired by Kropotkin's contrast, begins to whisper. It asks us to consider the community structures that failed, the support networks that were absent, and it wonders how we can build a web of mutual aid to catch people before they fall. This middle is messy. It's holding two conflicting ideas in your head at once: the ingrained story of competition and the emerging evidence for cooperation. Gradually, this leads us to a new clarity, a synthesis where the complicated becomes integrated and simple again, but on a higher, more profound level. This isn't a return to the simple black and white of the beginning, but an arrival at our understanding that cooperation is our fundamental operating system, even if it's often obscured by a culture that prizes competition above all else. We start noticing the countless acts of mutual aid that were always there, the invisible glue holding our society together. The Parent-Teacher Association organizing a fundraiser, the neighborhood app where people offer free furniture to those who need it, the way strangers work together to push a stranded car out of the snow. These aren't exceptions to the human rule. They are the rule. You may catch yourself pausing before reacting lately. That moment of hesitation where the old competitive impulse is interrupted by a new cooperative curiosity. That pause is the new clarity in action. Instead of seeing a rival in a coworker, we might see a potential collaborator. Instead of hoarding knowledge to get ahead, we feel the innate satisfaction that comes from sharing it and lifting everyone up. We begin to understand that our greatest strength has never been in outcompeting one another, but in our profound and ancient capacity to work together, to practice mutual aid, not as a lofty ideal, but as the most practical and natural response to the world's challenges. This is the clarity Kropotkin offers us. A vision of our nature not as a constant war, but as a constant, quiet, and powerful collaboration. Through this discomfort, we begin to see the faint outlines of a new path. One that isn't paved with the certainties we were promised, but is, instead, built by our own hands, step by tentative step. It feels shaky at first, like learning to walk all over again. And there's a part of us that desperately wants to run back to the familiar, even if it was a cage. That's the hardest part, the moment of choice, where the old story is so seductive, whispering that it's easier to just go back, to stop questioning, to fit in. But if we can take just one more step forward into that uncertainty, something remarkable begins to happen. The ground beneath our feet, which we feared would give way, starts to feel more solid, not because it's predefined, but because we are actively creating it with our presence, our attention, and our newfound willingness to just be here as we are. This is where the real shift occurs, not as a sudden lightning bolt of enlightenment, but as a gentle, dawning realization. We start to notice small changes in our everyday experience. You'll likely find daily decisions coming easier, not because you've discovered a magic formula, but because the paralyzing fear of choosing wrong has begun to lose its power. The mental energy once spent on maintaining a facade, on performing a version of yourself you thought was required, slowly becomes available for other things. It's like a tax you didn't even know you were paying has been lifted. That mental space opens up, and you might find yourself more present in conversations, more engaged with a task, or simply more able to sit in a quiet moment without a storm of anxious thoughts. Many notice old frustrations don't bother them as much. The driver who cuts you off, the long line at the grocery store, the minor technological glitch that used to ruin an hour, these things begin to land differently. They don't disappear, but your reaction to them transforms. It's not that you become passively accepting of everything. It's that your emotional center of gravity is no longer so easily knocked off balance by things that are ultimately outside of your control. The frustration might arise, but it passes through you more quickly, like a weather system moving across a wide open sky, because it's no longer feeding a deeper story of being a victim or needing everything to be perfect. You are just you, experiencing a moment of annoyance and then moving on with your day, your sense of self intact and unshaken by external events. This process is deeply personal, and yet it connects us to something universal. As we shed the layers of expectation, we start to recognize that same struggle in others. We see the subtle ways people contort themselves to fit in, the tiny hesitations, the defended opinions that seem to protect a fragile sense of self. This doesn't make us judgmental. Instead, it fosters a profound sense of empathy. We realize we're all, in our own ways, navigating the same human dilemma. We're all trying to find a place to stand that feels like our own. This recognition is the beginning of a new kind of connection, one based not on shared identities or beliefs, but on a shared, unspoken understanding of the journey itself. It's from this place of empathetic connection that a new form of strength emerges. It's not the brittle strength of being right or defended, but the resilient strength of being real. When you are no longer investing enormous energy into upholding a self-image, you have so much more available to actually engage with the world. Creativity often flourishes here, not because you're trying to be creative, but because the channels are no longer blocked by self-doubt and the need for approval. You might find yourself trying new things, not for a result or a badge of honor, but simply for the curiosity of the experience itself. The activity becomes its own reward. Relationships deepen because you are showing up more fully, without the filter of how you think you should be. You're able to listen better, to be more vulnerable, and to offer a more genuine presence to the people you care about. This isn't to say life becomes a constant state of bliss. Challenges still arrive, pain is still a part of the human experience, and doubt will still visit from time to time. The difference is in the foundation. Before, these challenges felt like attacks on a fragile structure. Now, they feel like weather on a sturdy mountain. The mountain doesn't complain about the storm, it simply endures it, knowing its own fundamental solidity. We start to develop that same kind of inner stability. The work is no longer about building a perfect, impermeable self, but about cultivating a flexible, compassionate awareness that can hold all of our experience. The joy, the sorrow, the the confidence, the fear, without needing to label any of it as a problem. This journey inward of questioning the inherited self ultimately brings us back outward into a more authentic and empowered engagement with our lives and our communities. Our career path might shift, our hobbies might change, our friendships might evolve, all organically moving toward what genuinely resonates with the person we are discovering ourselves to be. It's a life lived with more intention and less reactivity. We become active authors of our story rather than passive readers of a script handed to us. And in this active authorship, we touch upon a deeper truth about what it means to be free. It's not the freedom from all constraint, which is an illusion, but the freedom to be our whole, authentic selves within the realities of our world. The anarchist and philosopher Peter Kropotkin captured this feeling perfectly when he observed that true freedom is not some abstract, distant ideal, but a tangible physical experience of release, like finally taking off shoes that never quite fit. You never realized how much they were pinching, how they altered your gait and caused a constant low-grade ache, until you slip them off and feel the solid ground beneath your bare feet. The relief is immediate and profound. You can stand tall, you can move naturally. You are finally, fully supported by the earth itself. Together we discover that this is the ultimate destination of this entire uncomfortable, messy, and beautiful process. That sense of coming home to ourselves. It's the feeling of unclenching a fist you didn't know you were holding, of breathing deeply after a lifetime of shallow breaths. It's the quiet joy of realizing that you are enough, exactly as you are, not despite your flaws and complexities, but because of them. They are the very things that make you human, that connect you to the rest of us. And from this place of grounded, embodied authenticity, we can truly begin to build a world not based on coercion and performance, but on mutual aid, genuine connection, and the liberating truth that our greatest freedom is found not in individuality, but in community, in the shared understanding that we are all, each in our own way, just learning to walk barefoot on this earth, together.